So we've just been reflecting upon Amazon.com as a great case study within supply chain. And several areas we had looked at was the notion of unprecedented scale, hyperspeed, and continuous innovation. But in order for those three things to be working within the organization, we actually require 4 key pillars. One of those is mechanisms. The next is architecture. Then we have the culture, and then we have how the organization is structured itself, the organization. So we just started to think about those core areas, and one of the areas that we've been reflecting upon was mechanisms. So when Jeff was reflecting upon this, he was being quite clear when he was saying that good intentions don't work. What he was really getting at is this notion that, when people come to work, they're not coming to work thinking that they're going to do a bad job. Most people are coming to work thinking that they're already doing a decent job. I mean, most people are actually coming into work thinking, I'm doing a good job. So asking me to do an even better job is not going to result in an increase in performance. So from that perspective, when we think about mechanisms, it's about creating a process that's end-to-end. It means that not only are we going to put in place inspections, we're going to put in place tooling, and we're going to make sure that we have compliance with those processes. So it's a continuous process of assuring that what I've asked for is being delivered. And those mechanisms are pervasive across the whole of Amazon.com and the Amazon Web Services, more pertinent. But let's go back to the office and let's look into a bit more detail about some of these core areas. The next area that I think matters a great deal is the idea of architecture. And architecture is quite a dry topic, sure, but it's a critical component of how we work. So when we're thinking about architecture, we can do several things. We can have a traditional business, and those traditional businesses tend to be using architecture that is often described as monolithic, or a methodology for the delivery of new capabilities that is often seen as being waterfall. Meaning, I want to introduce a new program, I'm going to wait until all aspects of that program have been fully realized before I go into full production and delivery. The problem with all of that is that, first of all, it's super expensive. And when you're thinking about the world of supply chain, it's so complicated that waiting until you've got a perfect solution in place is actually going to slow you down. And even if that solution has covered all of the various contingencies that you could think about and all the various constraints that could be identified and built into it, it's quite likely that when it's fully delivered, it's not going to deliver the value that you were hoping for. And more importantly, it's going to take years. So that's why Amazon, and AWS in particular, have adopted this strategy of using microservices. Now, the idea of these microservices is that a small 2-pizza team, more of that later, are able to actually structure in such a way as that they can solve pain points quickly and effectively and then move on to the next. So if we think about this lady, she's been sent to the right part of the fulfillment center in order to pick a particular product. That is the pick microservice. That's all it does. It's all it will ever do. But in order to pick something, you actually need to know where it is, what it is, you need description, etc. In other words, you need all of these other microservices to be working in unison. And this, for instance, could be a warehouse management system. But then if what you want to do is that you want to be able to look at things like labor planning, tax reconciliation, optimization across the network, topology, etc., then what you very quickly end up with is Amazon.com. If you want to test the logic of that, think about it this way. How difficult would it be to create one system that was able to look end to end across the whole of the Amazon operation, was able to unify everything into one common place? And more importantly, if I needed to make small iterative changes to that particular system, would I have to switch everything off in order to be able to build it up? Would it have the flexibility to be able to actually work in an agile way so that I can keep pace with my customer requirements? So yeah, that's in terms of our architecture. One of the next key areas that we need to reflect upon is culture. And culture is quite an in-depth topic, so let's pick that up whenever we get back to the office. Hey, so welcome back to the office. So, one of the core aspects of culture that often comes up when we're talking about digital innovation is the culture around change management. And I just want to delve into that just a little bit. So, one of the things that we often experience when we're leading change is that we'll see people go through a very straightforward process. In the one instance, we will have shock, then we'll have anger. We're going to have this denial or becoming completely overwhelmed. And then we're going to move up into dialogue. And then we're going to move from dialogue into acceptance. And what I've just laid out, that sort of curve, that's the grief cycle. That is exactly how we will behave when we lose a loved one or when we lose something we truly value. And it manifests in exactly the same way. So when we think about shock, we will have people going, "You can't do that. You can't procure like that." Security just simply won't buy this. We can't do that. What do you think you're doing? You can't move to the cloud. Everything's on premise. It's that whole sort of shock. But it moves very quickly from shock to this notion that you're now asking people to change the way they think or to change the way they act or to change the process. And all of a sudden, it goes from shock to raw anger. And you could have a vendor where you're trying to change the procurement process. I'll see you in court if you think you're going to procure that way. Or you could be trying to change SOPs. And you'll simply have people that'll turn around and say, "Oh, wait a minute. No, no, no. We've been doing this for generations. This is the standard operating procedure. I've spoken to Axe. You're absolutely wrong. This is the way that it's done. This is the way that it will continue to be done. And this is the way we will continue to operate." And then you'll have a lot of people that are maybe really angry in terms of the skill sets. I've spent years owning this. I own that Excel spreadsheet. I own that process. That's me. I'm the subject matter expert in that. I'll be damned if you think you're going to come in here and change all of that. And you could even end up with whole departments banging. And that's because you're challenging in many ways the tribal knowledge, the tribal expertise, the foundations upon which these humans have built their working lives. Some of these guys, I've been working in some traditional businesses where you've got people that have been in the business for 12, 15 years plus, working in the same roles and the same jobs, growing steadily through the organization up into the middle management. These people, the whole idea that you're going to come in and shake the tray and change how things are done is shocking and results in a huge amount of anger. And if we move from this sort of anger and the shock, the next area is just completely, whatever. You guys get on with it. We're overwhelmed. We can't. We're too busy. We can't, as IT, we can't come and get you all that data sorted. We just simply can't. Too much work. Or detachment from it. Yeah, look, team, don't worry. We've got these consultants and they're telling us how we're going to go through a change process. It's all very interesting, but I can't see it working. So let's just sort of, help them along, but let's not become overly worried about it. And that sort of detachment from it is the lack of realization that fundamental change is about to occur. We are about to digitize the business. There's a very helpful Amazon leadership principle that is designed to get people moved into the dialogue piece as quickly as humanly possible. And that leadership principle is called have backbone, disagree, and commit. In other words, I expect you to come back and argue your point. I expect you to bring data to the table to tell me why the change or whatever it is that we're about to implement is wrong. I expect you to challenge anyone, regardless of their seniority in the organization. Once we make a decision, I also expect that you may disagree with me, but I also expect that you will commit fully to that decision. And commit fully to that decision means drop the anger, drop the detachment, commit to the decision, help get into dialogue so that we're able to discuss how we're going to drive the solution forward, not how we're going to prevent the solution being implemented. And getting into dialogue is so very important, and it helps drive innovation much faster. And therefore, the shallower we can make the shock, the anger, and the detachment, the better for everyone to be able to drive. Getting into dialogue will mean that we will also get into acceptance much quicker. And getting into acceptance much quicker will, of course, enable us to actually be able to carry out the changes that we need in order to drive the business forward. Now, the next part that I want to talk about is organization. Organization itself, it's fundamental to how we structure ourselves. And what we see within Amazon are very clear silos that enable top to bottom ownership over critical components of the business. So for example, last mile delivery, operations, etc. These key components of the business are driven top down so that we're able to exercise very quick decision making that are pertinent to each one of those core pillars to the business. But you can't operate purely in a silo. And that means that teams must be willing to collaborate at all levels in the organization, from the lowest level of the business right through to the senior leadership team. So the bottom line is that when we talk about how Amazon is organized, we can say that Amazon is organized specifically to innovate. It uses mechanisms to encode behavior. It uses flexible architecture to assure agility. It has a culture that is deeply rooted in customer centricity and is embedded throughout the organization. And we have organization that is willing to work interdepartmentally on specified projects in order to deliver outcomes on behalf of the business and, importantly, on behalf of Amazon's customers.